Oh man, I truly understand. Truly understand. Let's go ahead and here we go. I'm sorry, 1 second.
Okay.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's conversation. We're excited about this conversation. I'm nervous and excited, right? So, because it's a necessary conversation, and we're going to definitely bring some things to light that I believe will challenge all of us where we are as it pertains to our relationships and our interactions with one another. Um, I was just sharing with Teddy a moment ago. Many times in correcting relationships, one of the things that we need to do is correct ourselves first, or do an assessment of ourselves first. And so, tonight's conversation, that's what we're doing. We're doing an intrinsic assessment, evaluation of our role in everything that is happening in the world today. And I believe when we position ourselves, or when we posture ourselves to be the best version of ourselves, we definitely give us a greater chance to succeed, have healthy relationships, and move life and move things forward. So go ahead and share this conversation. Everybody that's logging in now, go ahead. Babe, thanks for logging in. Good to see you. Everybody that's logging in, please share this conversation. We got the good brother on tonight. 1 second, who has taken time out of his schedule to help us, to break some things down for us, so that we can, again, position ourselves to move life and to move things forward. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we got about another 30 seconds, and then I'll introduce my special guest tonight, who traveled around the world, and we're going to share a little bit about just some things and how these last 3 months have impacted his life personally, and then professionally, some things that he's contributing to advancing healthy relationships, healthy interactions with the people that we encounter. Hey, Mom, thanks for logging in tonight. Appreciate everybody. So tonight, guys, didn't have to go far. He's right across the bridge, right up 95. And our special guest tonight is Mr. Teddy Andrews. Ted, say what's up to everybody, man.
What's going on, everybody? Glad to be here with you guys. I got to correct something, though, Jay. I'm from across the bridge, but I'm all the way in Charlotte, North Carolina now.
Whoa! Wait. Nah, that's down 95, 85, 95 to 85.
95 to 85.
Yeah. Wow. Shout out, man. I want to shout out my big sis, Brenda Larley Showell, for making this connection. Really appreciate you, Brenda, for your contribution and connecting me and Ted tonight. And so, man, Ted, let's go ahead, man, and let's get right into it. Can you just share a little bit about your profession and your training, what you've been doing the last 20 years in your profession?
So I've been a leadership and professional development trainer for a number of years, mostly in corporate America with organizations like Bank of America, Nations Bank, First Union, Washington Mutual, WAMU, which was formerly the Dime Savings Bank, and a lot of organizations teaching on the level of professional development. So making team members better team members through just personal development. The last 8 years, I've been a flight attendant with American Airlines. I am not here. Let me put this disclosure out here, bro. I am not here representing American Airlines. I'm a proud member of the company, but I am not representing American Airlines. These are just my thoughts, my ideas. And for the past 2 years, I've been working with our inclusion and diversity team, going global and teaching a class that's called Disrupting Everyday Bias. So that's kind of like my area of expertise for the past 2 years. A little bit about that.
That's what's up. And before we get into breaking down what disruptive biases are, or breaking or disrupting everyday biases, man, how have you been? I know your industry has definitely been impacted by the pandemic. And can you just, talk to us about, just some of the things that you've personally experienced during this pandemic?
So, as you know, when COVID hit, the industry took a huge hit. So we've been reorganizing, restructuring. Many of my friends have recently lost their jobs because of reorganization, because the industry was hit so bad. I think in March we were flying maybe at 17 to 35% of our routes and areas. So flight loads are down. People are not getting on planes. People were afraid to get on planes. Many states and cities and localities were closed, so people weren't flying. So I was actually in Chile when COVID hit. And so we were even rushed back from Chile, and all of our international instructors were brought back to the States because they were going to discontinue classroom facilitation, and we've not restarted yet. So here we are 3 months later. So most of the instructors are no longer instructing. We're back to whatever our normal assignments are. I'm back to flying the friendly skies. Maybe not so friendly here lately, but so that's kind of how it's impacted me. Hours are reduced for a lot of us. There are companies offering voluntary leaves of absence, and so I'm about to take one in July. I'm going to take a voluntary leave, just so that maybe my taking a leave will save the company some money, and possibly when it's time to make decisions on furloughs, they won't have to furlough as many people because some of us volunteered to go ahead and take some time off.
Right. And you are a COVID survivor.
Absolutely.
You are a COVID survivor. How was that process, man? I'm glad that you are doing much better and that you're back to work, moving around. But can you, also just share a little bit about that experience and surviving that sickness?
So while I was in Chile, and they asked us to come back home, and I came back home in March, the early part of March, when COVID was kind of new and things were just still unknown about the virus itself. I came home with the sniffles on a Friday morning, and that entire weekend just got worse and worse, and wound up in the urgent care on Monday morning with 103.5 fever, aches, chills, like somebody had ran a truck over me. Tested me for the flu that Monday. 15 minutes later, no results, nothing found in terms of the flu. So we'll test you for COVID because you've been out in the country. Let's go ahead and test you. Sent me home to wait for the results 5 to 7 days later. On that Tuesday, they called me the very next day, diagnosed positive. You're under 14 days quarantine. By that Thursday, I couldn't breathe. Thought I was going to die in my house. Wound up in the emergency room and in the hospital in ICU for 10 days, and almost succumbed to the virus. But thank God, he had another minute for my life. So I'm here, but it was a struggle. Was out of work for almost 3 months. From March, I just went back to work May 19th. Still physically feeling okay, but mentally still struggle sometimes. I've had to go through some therapy sessions for PTSD. Because there are times that I wake up in the middle of the night and think that I'm still in an emergency room and ICU with tubes everywhere, and so that struggle sometimes I'm still battling with. But the Lord is faithful, and I've been overcoming it, and just try to take it one day at a time, bro. Just like anything else.
So with the sickness, you have experienced what we know as PTSD.
Mhm.
And outside of, you just being sick, did anything else contribute to that PTSD? Was it the news? Was it hearing of other people not surviving, or?
It was all of it, bruh. It was really all of it. It was the news, and I mean, just imagine there are thousands of people who are dying from the one thing you survived. So part of that PTSD is survivor's remorse, right? Why me? Why did I make it through?
Right.
Why didn't everybody else make it through? Why, like, why me, God? Or, okay, so what you try to tell me behind all this, God, is there a greater purpose for me in life? Am I supposed to be doing something that I haven't been doing and you give me another chance? All of that. So the news reports, the loneliness, the isolation, man, because I had to go through all that by myself. The Lord was
Wow.
with me, yeah, so I ain't gonna even try and be deep with it. But I mean, I had no physical contact with anybody for nearly 3 months. You couldn't come to my house. I couldn't go out. The quarantine had started hitting. Charlotte was on lockdown, so I
Yeah.
couldn't go anywhere. But thank God that I had a wonderful support system. Friends from around the globe were sending me stuff, water, food. People were sending me Junior's cheesecake and peach cobbler from Los Angeles. People from London sending me tea. People that love me and was trying to lend their support as much as they can. My church friends praying for me, job members, team members from work praying for me, sending me thoughts. So I had a wonderful support system through it, but it was very challenging. When I came home after 10 days, I couldn't even walk. I could barely walk from my bedroom to the mailbox. I couldn't walk from the couch to the kitchen. It was a
Right.
struggle, but thank God we
Man,
overcome it.
absolutely. Thank you. And I'm definitely encouraged by, hearing that you're doing much better, you're back at work, and you're moving around. And so just wanted to give everybody just a little backdrop into Teddy and who you are, and just even your personal experience during this pandemic. I know for some people, if they have not experienced, some don't think that it exists.
Right,
And
right,
all of the conspiracy theories
right,
surrounded it the first few weeks. Blacks can't get it.
right,
If you're in this age group, you can't get it.
right, right.
And
Crazy.
almost every theory that we heard has been canceled, right?
Right, right.
So, man,
Debunked.
there you go. Fake news, fake news.
Right, right.
But man, it's really a privilege speaking to you tonight. And so, I'm ready to dig into our topic of discussion. You mentioned it a little bit. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. Disrupting everyday biases.
Mhm.
Wow. Tonight, let's talk about it.
Let's get
People,
it.
whoever's listening, you are definitely welcome to type in questions or comments. Let's put out this disclaimer. Ted and I have had a couple of conversations. We do not speak for the entire Black race or
No, sir.
population, but we're speaking from experience and just training over the years, and definitely from his vantage point, training people of different ethnicities around the world. And so, it's really hard to give a world's view when you've only been in your hood.
Right. Right.
But when you've traveled and you've gotten the opportunity to interact and learn other cultures, and learn other behavioral patterns and thoughts and values, it allows you to broaden your perspective and your thoughts on how you perceive things. And so, Ted, let's go ahead and let's define bias. What is bias?
Okay, so bias is my inclination to favor or lean towards a particular thing in comparison to another, right?
Mhm.
So I tend to think this is more favorable or less than because of my view or my perspective. That's simply what bias is. All of us have them. You can't do anything about them. And we'll talk a little bit about possibly where they come from. But in terms of definition, it's kind of, my demonstrating weight one way or another about a
Right.
particular person, group, thing, situation, because of what I perceive it to be.
Yeah. So bias is different from racism, but bias also influences racism.
Yes, because racism is a byproduct of the bias you have about a person's color or ethnic group, right? So I'm biased towards a particular group of people, and it comes out in racism specifically because of their race or ethnic, their connection to an ethnic group.
Right.
So while it's different, it's a derivative of my bias. Okay, I
Yeah.
don't like blacks. I don't like whites. I don't like Hispanics. Or I love whites. I love blacks. Because bias is not good or bad. It's about how I perceive things and my connection or my favor or my favoritism towards or against that
Yeah.
particular race.
Yeah. So you said biases are not good or bad. Explain that a little bit more.
So I could have biases that are very good, right? I love the fact that Black Lives Matter. That's not bad, right? My thought process towards Black lives is that we matter. So that's not a bad thing, right? Some may perceive it because of their perspective and their bias that that's
Right.
wrong and they
Yeah.
don't matter, right? And when I encounter a Black life, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to shoot it down,
Mm.
right? Because my perceived matter, my perception on a Black life is that it doesn't matter. They're beneath me, right? So
Right.
I could have a bias that says, okay, it's every day is a great day. So my perspective on the day is that every day is an opportunity. Somebody else may have a perspective about the day that, well, I have to get up today.
Right.
So it's neither good or bad, the thought, because the bias is just your perspective, right? So your perspective doesn't necessarily have to be bad or good. It's just the thought that comes to mind. It's what we do with
Right.
that bias, or what we do, our actions that come from that perceived bias that
Yeah.
changes that thought from good to bad.
Yeah. And so okay, so you have conversations and you teach people on a professional level about
Mm-hmm.
these biases. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're a black man and
Mm-hmm.
you encounter people of different races, cultures,
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds, class. What has been your emotions? What has been your position in your mindset and your emotions during this season, witnessing what you witness, and then having the profession that you have where you get to speak to these things and share how they either positively or negatively impact our interaction with each other? What has this season been like for you, or these past, few weeks, really,
Okay.
when everything just kind of looks like it climaxed?
Okay. So there's a lot in that, right? So let me try to see if I can unpack some of it. So I'm a black male, right? So I can't change that. You can't wipe it off. I'm not. So there's a perception. Let's talk personally first. So I'm impacted greater than somebody who's not black by what's happened with not just Floyd, but brother Floyd, but the four lives that we've been, that we've had to deal with in the last couple of weeks. So maybe right before Floyd's is when we found out about Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna, and then the young man in Atlanta more recently. So
Right.
for me, my emotions have been all over the place, right? So I'm pissed some days because of some of the stuff I see on social media and people protesting and peacefully protesting. Let me put that out there, because there's a lot of people that look at the protests and are saying, oh, those people, and this is just ridiculous, and they're out there tearing up buildings and setting fires. So there's two things going on, right? You got people out there peacefully protesting that look like us, and a whole lot of people that don't look like us that are out there peacefully protesting. And you have some people who have infiltrated the protests and it started to riot and vandalizing and tearing down. And I do not condone any of that. Let me be clear. I do not condone violence. I do not condone destruction of property. While I can understand it, rage and anger and frustration, and it acts out in sometimes in a violent form. That's not what my stance is. My stance personally is that we can do things peacefully, and there comes a time when you're enraged and you got to learn to control some of your emotions.
Yeah,
you just can't act out. But as a Black man, my emotions, sometimes I'm pissed, sometimes I'm energized. That's what the whole point of me talking with Brenda and her reaching out to you is because I wanted whatever platform I can get to kind of like just talk about this, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we develop as individuals, when we open ourselves up to hear the many perspectives. We're closed-minded, we'll never grow. Right? We won't learn. We just get stuck in our ways, as our grandparents used to say. You're just stuck in your ways, right? Because you're not open to hear another perspective. So for me, as an African-American male, it's been challenging. It's been energizing, but it's also been very disappointing because we see stuff that we can visibly see with our eyes happening. The whole world can see, and there are still some people who say, why did they tear that building up? But say nothing about the lives lost.
Yeah.
Who are more concerned about buildings and monuments, some of which that were built in a time that, or created in a time that was bad for our people and represented terrible things for our people as a Black man, right? So then you have people who are saying nothing about the lives lost, but saying everything about a building.
Yeah.
And then they say, do it peacefully. But then you look back at how Colin Kaepernick tried to do it peacefully, and they made it about the flag more than about the protest he was. So it's challenging at times as a Black man. Now, as an educator, it's difficult because you are trying to teach a class that's been mandated by an organization that says everybody has to take this class. So you have people that come to class and are like this, and will sit like that the entire time, bruh. Will sit like that.
So real quick, bro. Let me intervene here. Let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Is it like, do you feel like sometimes you're teaching them on how they should treat you or how they should approach you, or somebody like you in your shoes?
My real life experience is intertwined into my delivery of the class. It's intentional.
Okay. Right.
So I share my experience from a Black man's perspective throughout the entire class. So yes, I'm educating them on what my experience is like, but I'm still tying it back to content that says, here's documented proof of how we see things. Whether you want to accept it or not, I'm just trying to show you that this is how we look at things. So I'm trying to educate more. From my perspective, I want you to really see you more than you see me. I'm trying to open your eyes up to how. Now, I'm not trying to judge you. I'm not trying to tell you the way you look at things is right or wrong. I'm just trying to offer this suggestion to you that you might be looking at this way because of these things. And if they're left unchecked, they could cause someone else harm.
That's good. That's good. So you're trying to help them see them on how they see you.
Correct. Or anyone.
Right.
So when you walked into this classroom and you saw a Black man get ready to teach this class, if you have a problem with Black men or Blacks, you're gonna have a problem this whole class. So it's my job as a facilitator or an instructor to get you to see you, and hopefully by seeing you and how you perceive me, you might say, hey, I need to check this.
Yeah.
Because unconscious bias is about me doing this and I don't realize it. Conscious bias is the one you got to worry about. Those are the people that know you Black, know they don't like Blacks, and know I don't want to hear nothing you have to say, but I got to come to this class, so I'm going to sit here with my arms folded the entire time until it's 3 o'clock and it's time to leave. All right, class is ended.
So Tad, you just mentioned something, and I wanna tap in there. I think we were gonna save it for a little later, but you mentioned conscious and unconscious bias.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned conscious and unconscious bias, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, but before you answer that, let's go back to we all have biases, and
Mm-hmm.
then let's go ahead and let's tackle the conscious and the unconscious bias.
Okay.
You explained it a little bit earlier, but I want you to explain it and then go into the conscious and unconscious, like how it comes out.
Okay.
Because we have this perception of things and it comes from somewhere.
Right.
And sometimes it is not until it comes out, right? When it comes out, is that unconscious becoming conscious? Or how does that, or how do we define that? Like what's happening in that moment?
So it could be a multitude of things that's happening, right? You could be coming to a conscious awareness of like, oh dog, like I didn't realize I thought that way, right? So that's an unconscious bias, becoming consciously aware that you have this bias, right? Because remember before, y'all are racist, y'all are bigots, y'all are not me, right? But then we kind of dive into a little bit, and then I start to shine a light on myself and say, yo, wait, maybe I am racist. Maybe I have been biased, right? So, or you could have someone in the classroom or in life. So let's take it out of the classroom and just say in general, you could have somebody that's consciously aware. Yeah, I don't like black folk. Yeah, I don't like white folk. So what? Can't change my mind about it. Yes, I have this thought process about Asians. Yeah, I know black folk. All they like is watermelon and chicken. So what? They're beneath me. Yeah, that's right. So you get what I'm saying? So there's this whole thing that says, I consciously am aware of my biases and I don't care and you can't change it. Right. And then you have those that say, I didn't know. Oh my God, what do I do to change this?
Yeah.
So and those, I don't know where you want to go from here. I don't know if you want to go into how we come into these biases.
How do we come into those biases?
Okay,
How do we come into those biases?
so part of our identity is defined by individual and life experiences, right? So who we are is defined by where we come from and what we've experienced. So so how we see the world is developed in a lot of different ways, right? So how I see you as an individual, how I see the world is defined through several things, like possibly real world encounters, right? Stuff that I've been through in my life that I've experienced. I was turned down from a job because they told me we're not hiring African Americans right now. That's a real world encounter, right? Or I was robbed by somebody who was 6 feet tall and African American. So I might have a bias towards African Americans that are 6 feet tall. That's a real world encounter. I was robbed by somebody or molested by somebody that was blonde hair and blue eyes. So now I don't even have anything to do with anybody that's blonde hair and blue eyes. That's a real world encounter that's now helped to shape my bias towards that particular thing that's impacting me. You with me?
Yep.
So those are true or lived experiences. That's sometimes how biases are formed. Also, think about how we gravitate, away or from or to a particular thing. My tendency to say, I'd rather go to Target than Walmart. That's a bias. Now, it may come from my experiences that I've had at Walmart, or it may have come from vicarious experiences like books I've read, movies that I watch,
Right.
television channels that I watch, where I get my news from. I promise you, if you only watch one news channel and that's the only place where you get your news from, be it CNN, Fox, MSNBC, wherever local ABC News, wherever, if that's the only channel, you're going to tend to think the way they skew news. That's just
Yeah.
a fact. That's neither right or wrong, good or bad. Remember, we talked about good or bad? It's neither one. It's just the way I see things based on possibly the vicarious experiences that I get from media. So media, social media, right? It's got 30,000 followers. It's got to be true, right? Oh, I saw it on Facebook, right? It's got to be true, right? So I'm gonna pass this on. I'm gonna forward it. I'm gonna copy and paste it to my page because I saw it on Facebook of a friend of mine. You never experienced it. You never heard it. It may not even be true, but the bias you have is Jason Moody posted it, so it's got to be true.
Right.
So I'm gonna copy and paste it. So that's vicarious experiences, right? The biases can come from that, how you see things. It could be messaging, right? So they say in marketing, it takes 7 times to be exposed to something before you become consciously aware of it. So think about this. We're watching a particular program on TV, and every 15 minutes, pretty much, you'll have a commercial break, but it's the same commercial for Tide detergent, right? So this entire night, every show that I've watched had this Tide commercial on. When I go to the grocery store, I go to shop for detergent, guess what I'm going to probably buy?
Tide.
Because the bias has been set in my head towards this particular detergent.
So could it be some of the things that are happening, as much as they are, or the ignorance of this particular topic is because the conversation isn't being had enough, or the discussion isn't coming up the topic, and specifically, addressing, those internal perceptions and views of what's happening?
I think it's both and. So I think it's that we're not talking, and I think that we're talking and people are not listening. So we can have a conversation, right? Or we can at least dialogue. That don't mean you're listening to anything I have to say. We're just talking, right? But you're not taking anything I have to say. So if I tell you I'm hurting, and you say, okay, you're hurting, and I keep saying I'm hurting, and pretty soon I'm gonna be like, Jay, I'm hurting. Jay, I'm hurting. Because the more I continue to tell you the same thing, at some point I'm gonna wonder, why am I continuing this conversation with you? Because you're not hearing me. You're listening to me. Your ears are open, but your heart's not open.
Right.
I don't want to. And sometimes those biases come from culture, right?
Right.
Our upbringing, right? Where we come from, and sometimes our culture is defined by ethnicity, race, gender, your region of the country, like where you come from, where you live. Part of it could be subculture, right? So in the larger scheme of things, as a Hispanic, we're all Hispanic, but possibly I could be Puerto Rican, Dominican, Mexican. So all those are different subcultures. So that could be driving. This is just the way we do it in our culture, right? It's a black thing, right? It's a white thing, right? So sometimes our culture defines the biases, or can impact the biases that we have towards people. Sometimes it's where we come from, north or south, right?
Right.
Brooklyn or the Bronx, New York or Jersey, right? Different cultures. Some of us lived in Jersey or lived in New York all of our lives, never went to Jersey. I could probably count on one hand how many times I went to the Bronx, and I lived in Brooklyn all of my life. Bed-Stuy, do or die. But there are times that even in Brooklyn, we have subcultures, right? East New York, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, Fort Greene, Bensonhurst, Park Slopes. So those are all subcultures of a culture. And that can influence the people we hang out with, the church you're affiliated with, Kojic, Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, Apostolic, Jesus only. All of those are subcultures of religion that can also impact the way we see things or our perspective of things.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about when it turns bad.
Okay.
And I think what we've been experiencing in our country is when the biases against us have turned bad. And that's what I mean by experiencing in our country, the police brutality and some of the things we've been seeing, the Ahmaud Arbery situation, is when I believe those perceptions that's been influenced by our culture have gone bad. But can you just explain that a little more, and even, help us to identify where we may even contribute to those bad parts?
So I want to start by saying that, again, the thoughts, you can't control your thoughts, right? They just come to your mind. Well, we sort of can. If you start to suppress ideas that come to your head, like if something tells you to go out and kill somebody, you have a way of suppressing the thought or suppressing the action, because the thought sometimes just pops in your head, right? Somebody sits by you and you like, why they have to come sit by me? And it could be your perception of what they have on.
Right.
It could be their race. It could be their size, right? Like it's only this little bit of space, and he's gonna try and squeeze himself in this little bit, right?
Oh, wait. That's a bias?
Yes.
Oh.
Because you're thinking, so your bias is, does he really think he can fit in this space next to me? Like, why you come sit by me? Why you couldn't go sit over there where that empty chair is?
I think this is what they meant, that all have sinned and fallen short. It's me, oh Lord. I'm standing in the Father.
Standing, brother, standing.
Wow.
But yeah, bro. So, and we don't think of it that way. Again, you know why? Because we offer a lot more grace to ourselves than we do to others.
Ooh.
That's our issue. Like, I'm not, but they are. Especially sometimes for us as African Americans, because we've experienced racism through the years. You know, our grandparents' experiences. We know our history, right? So we've been a product or byproduct of racism and suppression all these years. So it's hard for me to imagine myself as an African American as racist or biased. But how many times have you walked into a room and looked for the black group in the room and you sat with the blacks because you felt more comfortable? Or a white person entered the room and you might have said to yourself, why he come sit over here? Or somebody that was larger than you, that, like I was just saying, on the subway, right? So you ride in the subway, there's a little bit of space. She could have sat here and you wouldn't have said anything because she was slimmer. So you have a bias towards heavier people because why? It's going to make you uncomfortable in the seat.
Wow.
So the thought is not necessarily the bad or good. It's what you do with the thought, your actions. So we've got to some kind of way figure out in between the thought and my acting on this thought, how do I just take a breather and allow another narrative to be introduced so that I don't act on what I think. So let me give you a for instance with George Floyd and the police officer. If instead of me seeing him as just some black thug, some counterfeiter, if I had just for a moment stopped and in my thinking said, this is somebody's dad, this may be somebody's son, this may be somebody's brother, maybe that counter narrative, besides just some old black nigga, some old thug, some old hoodlum, if I had slowed down my thought process to allow another narrative to be introduced, maybe we wouldn't have saw what we saw. So the action is what's the good or the bad. You can't control your thoughts sometimes. Stuff just come to your head. You just be like, oh, where did that come from, right? Sometimes you surprise yourself with some of the stuff that comes to your brain. And that's because our mind's always racing, right? Especially now, all the stuff that we get in the news cycle, stuff we see on social media. So immediately, automatically, rage, right? So we allow ourselves to just slow down for a minute and let another narrative. What else could be true about Jason? I'm thinking this about Jason, but what else could be true?
Got you. That's heavy, Ted, because I think what we start to find out is we've all been in that place, position. Those thoughts have definitely crossed our mind at some place or point. And we've been in environments where things have come out that suggest how we feel and how we think towards another individual or a group of individuals. You know, whether it's, me walking down the street and seeing a group of people with a bunch of tattoos, right?
Correct.
You know, if I bunch of tattoos, earrings, piercings, and they got on all black, I'm going to make a judgment call, and I'm probably going to make a U-turn or go on the other side so that I don't, you know, come into close contact with them. And so,
because the bias in your head has already prejudged them to say they're either skinheads, they're either because of either what I read in the news, what I've heard over the time, maybe even what I've, like I said, real life experience. Maybe I've had some experience with people that look like that, right? So now I have to make a conscious decision at this moment. Am I gonna keep walking and nothing happens? Because perceived danger is just as bad as realized danger, or like danger that I've experienced. Like, this could be bad for me. And you might be right. You could get attacked, right? Here come this nigga. Let's get him. That could be true. But it also could not be true. I could be jogging down the street, right? It's 12 o'clock at night. I'm jogging down the street. And I get to this dark alley. It looks dark, no lights, very dimly lit. And I see somebody 6'5", 300 pounds, tattoos everywhere, right? And I'm heading that way. And like you, I might say, oh no, this looks a little too scary. That dude might hurt me. Let me turn around and go back or cross the street. Or I just keep jogging. Nothing happens. We pass each other and it's just another dude out jogging. But the bias that I have comes to mind and says, yo, this looks dangerous. He got on a hoodie. Young brother that was leaving the store, George Zimmerman. Ahmad. What is he doing in this neighborhood? Jogging. So at that moment, if I just said, oh, there's a black kid jogging, nothing would have happened. But my bias said, this is a black dude jogging. He should not be in this neighborhood. What is he doing in this neighborhood? Let me go chase him. Because they didn't stop to allow another narrative to play out and say, he's just another kid jogging.
How much more detrimental is that when it's in the minds of those that are sworn to protect us?
Well, they've sworn a duty to protect and serve, right? So I've taken an oath that I'm going to do this, but I still have this perceived bias against a particular group of people. And that's going to be detrimental because anytime I encounter somebody that I have this bias. Now, again, remember, the bias that I have, I could have heard it all my life. You know how those people are. They went from that neighborhood. You know how they act. You know what you got to do if you ever run into one of them. So that perceived bias, if I've left it unchecked, right, 20, 30 years, then I get a job with the police department, still unchecked, right? That bias is in the back of my head. Now, I've never had any engagement with them, but now I'm confronted with them and those unchecked biases start to play out. Let me take him down. He's not worth anything. You know how they're dangerous. They're hoodlums. They're thugs. He's probably got a gun on him. He's probably got drugs on him. Because the biases. And it could be stuff that I've heard, like my friends, just, you know, all our lives, this is what we said. I've never experienced it. So it's just perceived bias, right? Because I've never experienced it. It's not real world encounter. It's a perceived bias. So I've never challenged that bias. I've never checked it. It's left unchecked. And now, and that's not just for the police officers, but we're specifically talking about them right now, but that's me and you. You know stuff your parents and grandparents have said to you, right? That we have biases towards police officers. because we've been told by our parents. And now this is real experience, live biases, right? So this is the bias that most African American men have. When you get into a confrontation with a police officer, if you get pulled over, what are you supposed to do? Put your hands on the steering wheel.
10 and 2.
Do not confront. Do not listen to whatever they have to say. Answer. Be respectful. That's a bias that you have towards police officers. Now it's been a taught bias, right? Because your parents have drilled that in your head. So now, oh my God, the police have stopped me. Now it may be a real world encounter because all the experiences that we've seen come to light, right?
Right.
But it's still a bias. That's why we can't say it's good or bad. It's what you do with what you think that actually turns it good or bad.
Got you. Got you. How do you challenge those biases, right? If you're not in an environment where you're interacting with people outside of your culture, how would that bias be challenged so that you can maybe see a different narrative?
Well, first you got, again, if we're talking about unconscious bias, I don't know I have a bias. So I'll never break out of the stereotype. I hang out with the same people. I live in the same neighborhood I work with the same people. Some people work right 5 miles from their house, and they work with the same people that live in their neighborhood. They eat lunch with the same people. They go home. Their families have always thought this way. So it won't be challenged until you're confronted by it. And that perceived bias becomes a reality. And now I'm acting on what I've always heard. But here's the rub. What happens if the way I'm expecting them to act really doesn't? I'm expecting them to be one way, but they're totally different. And that comes out a lot when I'm teaching a class and they be like, yo, like, I can't. You were like, well, what were you expecting? You didn't think I was going to be articulate?
Yeah.
You on an interview, you know, and you know, I did a special assignment with the recruitment team, and some of our white counterpart would make comments like, "Oh my God, he was so," about African American people that came in for an interview, like, "Wow, he was just so good. He was so articulate and well spoken." Like, yo, so what?
Whoa.
But the perspective, the bias is that's not what I was expecting to get from him when I interviewed him.
Yeah.
I had one guy, one time I was working with a counterpart who's an older white male. We were both doing recruiting for flight attendants. And this one African-American guy, master's degree, articulate, 6 feet tall. He was a school teacher, but he wanted to change his profession. And the other recruiting manager was kind of on the fence about him. And he's like, I don't know, it's just something about him. You know, he's just got a little too much swag for me. And I challenged him on it. Define swag, and why are you using it for him?
Right.
Was it something in his conversation? What was, I don't know. So in those moments, we got to challenge stuff like that.
Right.
That's how you challenge the bias. That's, you know, you ask questions to say, you know, help me understand where you're coming from with that. Because if we don't challenge it, it continues. Because again, some people live the same place they've always lived, go to the same church that they've always, because sometimes it's taught at our church. That's why I don't go to that conference. That's why I don't go to that convention. Because it is. Never went to the convention, but you have this perceived bias against the convention, and so it's kept you away from it because of what you thought about it. You ain't never been. Say, yo, have you ever been to this convention? Nah, I don't go. You know, they call it the sissy convention. How do you know? You ever been? You know, like, nah, but you know what they say. So you got to challenge people on that stuff, because sometimes I've never, ever been challenged on my bias.
Yeah.
The perception I have is my reality until I'm exposed to something different.
Yeah.
And for
That's
a lot of
good.
people, perception is reality.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. We we experience that every day, and I think because that may be our immediate environment, it is not until we go outside of that immediate environment do we recognize, that we have those biases and we contribute to a lot of the different things that don't allow us to grow
Right.
or have healthy relationships with people outside of our circle. And even within our culture and within our race, we have biases within each other.
Right. Right.
Like it's like, to that executive in the company, when you see the other brother down the hall, it's like, yo, what's up, like,
Right. Right.
can I get the hello, how are you, like you did, Bob and Peter,
Mhm. Mhm. What's up, brother?
like,
What's up,
what's
brother?
up,
What's
brother?
up, bro? What's
What's
up,
up,
bro?
bro?
Oh,
Yeah,
why didn't you say hello to me just like you said hello to him?
yeah,
Which I'm cool with. But again, if the bias is to think that it's okay for me to dummy down my conversation with you or brother down my conversation with you
brother
because
down.
you're black, right?
Yeah,
So I don't feel like I have to give you the same level, or I feel like the white person that I address the other way deserves more of a professional, because it's okay for me to be slang with my brother because he's
right,
black. So that's a
right.
bias that it's okay, you know. So you
And
got to
that and that
challenge. Mhm.
and that's something that we contribute to. So it's
Yes,
almost like we treat them better than we treat each other.
at times we possibly can because there's a perspective. Again, remember, you've taught all your childhood because we didn't have a lot of people like that looked like us in positions of power and authority. So you're taught all your life to hold them to a higher esteem or be respectful when you say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to the school teachers, because a lot of our school teachers, unless you grew up and went to school in the hood like I did, most of my teachers were black. The majority, the principal was black, the dean was black, and you had a few white teachers who taught in our schools, but we were taught to be respectful to all. But there was something about when you came in the presence of someone white, and we do it sometimes even with, within our own race, light skin, dark skin. Remember the jigaboos and the
Hey,
Isleys?
my wife said colorism as well, and I was about to ask you who's winning this season, light skin or dark
Right.
skin?
Well, we don't never go out of style. So
Well, I'll tell you this: ball heads are winning this season because a brother, the ball heads are winning this season.
especially during this 90 with Corona.
Right, right. But yeah, colorism,
Yeah.
the light versus dark, and that's something that we don't see as contributing to maybe something potentially negative, even within our culture that we
Yeah.
contribute.
Yeah, well, that's because we tend to think, and that I think that has a lot to do with plantation mentality. House Negroes versus field Negroes,
Ooh,
right? So you had dark skinned people working in the field, the light skinned people, because they were closer in complexion, they worked inside the house because it was easier for whites to stomach the lighter versions of them, which were probably byproducts of rape and molestation. So I experience that even at work sometimes. Some of my white friends are quicker to, because they can't figure it out. You light skin, you got light eyes. Like, I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, "Where are you from?" I was like, "From Brooklyn." No, no, like, "Where are you from?" Like, "No, like, where are you from?" And I'm like, "Brooklyn." Like, "No, like, where are your parents from?" "Brooklyn." No, no, I mean, like, are you American? Like, really? Like, yeah, I'm Black American. My mother's side is Indian. My father's side is Black American. Like,
yeah,
but again, because I'm light skinned, it may be easier or more comfortable for me to accept you and bring you into my fold. Likewise, with somebody um that's lighter than me or darker than me, we tend to have, it was in sororities. That's how you got the Kappas, that's how you got the Alphas, that's how you got, come on, Because in school, it was okay. Where I went to school, the alphas were the smart boys, the Qs were the gym rats, right? So we had classism
Wow.
ourselves.
Wow.
So yeah, bro. That
That's
sometimes,
that's good. That's
sometimes,
good because we need that. You know, we again, I think with everything that is going on, one of my prayers has been that we assess ourselves where we are, our thinking, our mentality concerning what's happening right now, and position ourselves and also challenge ourselves to bring solutions to resolve some of these issues. I'm not even on some, trying to get them to like us, but at the same time, I'm like, are you open to the conversation?
correct. And so am I saying, am I open to the conversation, or are they open to the conversation? I'm saying, are you open to possibly hear and change? Because we can have a conversation and you listen to everything I have to say, but you didn't hear me. So I don't want to just have a conversation anymore because we've been talking long enough. I want to know
Wow.
whether or not you're open enough to listen and then take action.
Yeah.
Like I don't want you, and I say this to a lot of my white friends that have been asking, what can I do? Like I'm the expertise on black, right? Because I'm your one or
Not
two
yeah.
black.
It's because you're light skinned and you make them feel a little more comfortable.
I don't know. I just think it's because that might be part of it, but I think it's also because I try to like I see color. So anybody, let me start by saying that anybody says that they don't see color, they're a lie.
Yeah.
But we have got to, like Brenda, I saw just say, you got to challenge ourselves to educate people. We've got to, even before we can get to educating them, I don't want to have a conversation with you if you're not open to what am I going to do about this once I've heard it.
Wow.
Like, because that's a waste of my time now. Like my time is too valuable to sit
That's
down and
good.
have a discussion with somebody who's saying, I'm not willing to listen and learn. So
Yeah.
if you want to listen and you want to learn, and then you're going to make some type of adjustments, because sometimes, you know, I need you to be an ally. I need you to kind of like, because your white friends, your other white friends, they'll listen to you before they listen to me.
Yeah.
So if you hear my heart, I need you to now start having some conversations with your friends who won't hear my heart, but they'll
Yeah.
hear yours. And if you can give them a perspective that you didn't have and that you've now been open to and you've been educated on, now maybe you can take it and educate somebody else. Because I'm not doing like I love Emmanuel and what he's doing, Emmanuel Acho, what he's doing with that conversation with a black man. I love it. I love the stuff that I see you doing too, bro. But we're not like, all I can do is tell you how we're feeling, but you've got to make a decision that you're going to challenge. You're going
Yep.
to disrupt the bias that you have. That's why I love this class that we facilitate, calling Disrupting Everyday Bias. It's because once I've made you aware of the biases that you have, it's up to you to do something about it. What are you going to do with the conversation we just had?
Yeah. I need more than a post that Black Lives Matter.
Right. Right. Or post that as well as the post about the towers being tore down or the statues. Don't
Yeah.
just, if you feel like you have to talk about the statues, great, because we shouldn't be vandalizing. I'm sorry, I stick to that, right? But I need you to post some stuff about the 4 Black lives that just got taken. Why haven't
Yeah.
you posted anything about that?
Yeah.
So, which means you've heard me say Black Lives Matter, and you say, "Yeah, I know they all lives." No, we're not talking about all lives. That's like saying during Breast Cancer Week or Awareness Month, don't colon cancer count, but colon all cancer counts.
Wow.
Now we're not talking about all cancer. We're talking about breast cancer.
Right.
That's the same. So I challenge all those people that say all lives, blue lives. I got brothers and cousins and uncles that are part of the sheriffs, they're police officers, and I challenge them to say, when people say we support you, blue lives matter, as an African American, you should be said, absolutely, thank you for your support, and Black Lives Matter too.
Yeah.
Responsibility as a Black police officer, because the issue is that a lot of white people see Black people in uniform, but they don't see the Black. They see the blue uniform first.
Mm.
And that's part of the problem that I have personally, that you can see my blue uniform and say, I support you, but you've not said one thing about the 4 Black people that got killed. What about their lives? You put up prayer requests, Christians. Oh, we got to pray for these police officers. You didn't put up one post about praying for the family of those 4 lives that were taken. I have a problem with that.
Yeah. You know what was interesting? One of the things that I saw today, and it was this was probably the first one that I've actually seen like without somebody reposting, but I actually saw it was the funeral for Ahmaud Arbery today, and during the comments, someone made a comment. I'm like, yo, let me click on this page to see what he's talking about.
Right,
bro. This guy comes out of his mouth to say a white man can't get a fair day in court.
So let me help you with that. From his perspective, that might be true. But is that something that you want to say on a day like today? So that's my challenge to that white brother. Like, that might be true, but that's not the soup of the day. The soup of the day is this guy's funeral. This African American male who was gunned down by 3 white males, chased, slaughtered, like run down like an animal in the jungle, and murdered. And you want to post about a white man can't? Yeah, that might be true. But bro, I need you to post that and then say, wow, this. Post it later. Post it next week. Don't post it in the middle of a conversation about Ahmaud's funeral.
Yeah.
So again, that bias came to his mind, right? This is the way I think about how white men are treated. So rather than slowing down and allowing another narrative to come in, that what's important right now is Ahmaud Arbery. He didn't let that happen. He continued, and then that bias impacted his action, and he made that statement, which could very well be true for him. So now my bias as an African American male is like, yo, dude, like not today, bro, not today, right?
Yeah.
So my challenge, if I had saw it, I would have probably been like, bro, not today. We're not having that today, right? So while that may be true, this is what you need to think about today. Like a very dear friend of mine who I've been hurting and been trying to pray and ask God to give me a conversation with a white female friend of mine that I'm hurting because we're good friends, work friends, right? Not work friends because that's defining, right? I think outside of work, we've developed a relationship with each other. But on the day that Floyd was murdered, it was Memorial Day. She had 8 or 10 pictures up about the flag and not one post about the killing of that man in the street. I want to ask her why. Like, were you not just as concerned about this Black life that you were about patriotism on that day? And since then, there has been not one post on her page. And I've been looking too intentionally. And if she's watching, and I hope she is, we're going to have a little conversation soon about it. Because since then, she's had one post about an African American, and it was a police officer she was asking prayer for because he was hurt during the riots in Atlanta. Not one post about Ahmaud, not one post about Breonna, not one post about George Floyd, not one post about the young man in Atlanta that just was murdered. Not one post. And you have an African American friend. I don't care how many other ones you have. You got one here. Why haven't you said anything? Why haven't you posted anything? This is the challenging part, right? Difficult conversations that we need to have. Necessary conversations that need to be had. We can't be afraid. my hashtag that I've been using is silent no more.
Absolutely.
I refuse to be silent. I refuse. And if it makes it uncomfortable and I lose some friendships over it, so be it. I'm not silent about it. I'm calling out everything I say, I'm calling it out in love.
Right.
Because I want you to see another narrative. Because what you're not allowing is another narrative to be introduced to the bias that you have. And it's a perceived bias. You've not had that experience. You've not had an experience with an African American man with a hood on. Why do you think he's a thug?
Yeah.
You've never had that experience. Where did it come from? Why do you think that way? Who taught you that? Where did you learn that? Where did you read that? What newspaper? What news channel are you watching? So sometimes we gotta just turn that down. Turn that TV down sometimes. Turn it off.
Yeah. For everybody that's watching tonight, my man Ted is really just educating us and getting us to reconsider how we think and how we perceive life. If you would do me a favor, the next few moments while we're still having this conversation, if you have a question, he's an educator. He's pretty versed in this topic matter. I think this is something that can also help us as we deal with each other. If we heal within, then we can thrive without or outside of our culture, outside of our race. But we definitely need to assess how we deal and how we work with each other on a daily basis. So if you have any questions, come on and get those questions out, and we're going to do our very best to attempt to answer them on tonight. Ted has a very important encounter tomorrow, or meeting rather, where he will be sharing, his thoughts and his perspective on, things that the company can do to address some issues. Ted, a lot of people, struggle with corporate policy and how they, deal with the whole race issue, and I guess try to be as fair as possible. But many have still encountered the racism, still encountered where, blacks have been up against whites for positions, and the white people may even be less qualified, but still somehow ended up with the position. You have any words of encouragement for them, for the people who have fallen into that place?
Well, let me speak to that first before I offer a word of encouragement. The reality is, a lot of corporations are top heavy, unless it's a minority company. The reality is a lot of major corporations are top heavy white. It's just a reality. So especially I can speak for mine. I think we have 2 people of color on the entire senior leadership. The very senior, we only have 1, and he's the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer with us. That's it. So when you look at hiring practices, who's doing the hiring? And if you're a company, if you want your company to look like the people you serve, then there ought to be some practices put in place where those that are making the decisions to hire look like what you want those people to look like. That's going to work there. So you can't have, like I had that experience with the gentleman who said the black guy had too much swagger, but the young white lady who was applying for the position as well, he gave her a pass because she reminded him of his niece. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. And she just reminded me of my niece, Kelly, who was underqualified from my perspective as the recruiter. It's like, what? We just let her go. You just let her go through, and she doesn't even have a degree. She has a high school diploma. She's had 1 job since she's gotten out of high school. And this brother has a master's degree, teaches students. Why is he not qualified? Because he had too much swag, and she reminded me of my niece. So you have to have some accountability in place so that I can look back and say, okay, so if Jason is recruiting and he's the white guy and Teddy's recruiting and I'm a black guy, how many people of color did Jason hire and how many did he reject? And then I need to have a conversation with Jason if I see that 95% of the people that he's hiring is white and he's white. And I need to have a conversation with Teddy if 95% of the people that I hire as an African American is black. There needs to be accountability on both sides, right?
Yes.
So there's got to be some accountability put in place, and that's kind of some of the stuff that we'll be talking about tomorrow, is about how we've been feeling in the midst of all of this turmoil as African Americans in the workplace. Some of the racism that we see, do we experience it? What have we seen? What have we experienced? Senior leadership wants to hear that.
Yep.
So that's what I'm talking about. So the encouragement I would be is to speak to power. If you feel like you've been overlooked, or you think that you should have done this or you should have done that, make sure before you speak to it, you've gotten all your ducks in a row. I know I did this. I know I did this. I know I did this. And then speak to power. And sometimes it's a position that you applied for, and you've applied and you've applied, and then you notice that this company is hiring more people that don't look like you. Right. Do a post about it. Make people aware about it, because sometimes that's your voice, right? Yeah. Again, we're not in a dispensation now that we're silent anymore. Silent no more.
Silent no more.
Sometimes you gotta call out what you see as wrong, but make sure when you call stuff out, you didn't go up there sloppy on that interview. You wasn't half knowing your information, and you were stuttering over questions and stumbling and couldn't answer questions, and you went far left and they were asking you about a specific answer, and you never gave it. You went all around it, and they're like, she can't even answer a question. Yeah. Right? So I was
Ted, here's a question. How do you challenge someone who has a known bias but isn't open to a dialogue?
You tell them that they're not open, and when they're ready, we can talk. Because there's some people you're not going to be able to change their mind about what they think. This is what my grandmother taught me. This is what my great grandma said. This is the way they taught me, and they are not open to change. So if they're not open to dialogue, the only thing you can do is speak your truth and be done with it. Not expecting. I think what happens a lot of times is that we go into a conversation with the expectation we're going to change someone. That shouldn't be why you want to have the conversation, so that I can change them, but so that I can be heard. Because if I'm heard and their heart is ripe, they'll hear what I have to say. Because a lot of this stuff is a heart issue. You can't tell me as a Christian that you can see George Floyd die. I don't care what color you are. You can't tell me that you're a Christian and your heart was not broken with compassion for that man the way he died. And if you said no, he deserved it, something's wrong with your heart.
Yeah, like that's been one of the challenging parts, because even while we're talking about biases, it was almost as if they allowed whatever criminal charges he may have had to say he deserved to die. I'm like, wait, that don't make sense.
Right.
You got an issue with how I paid for my merchandise, and I should die for that?
Right.
That's the way I'm interpreting he got what he deserved.
Or how did I even know it was bogus? Like, maybe somebody passed it to me in exchange. Maybe I went to another restaurant and this was part of the change they gave me, because they weren't checking $20 bills. So how do I know that? And even if that was the case, you really believe he should have died for that? Something's wrong with your heart. That's a heart issue. And to answer that young lady's question is, some people's hearts you can't change. You can only speak your truth with the hopes, not the expectation, but with the hope that it'll change them.
Yeah.
That's what all our forefathers lived on, was hope.
Yeah.
Not expectations. They didn't have expectations that the white people were going to do right by us. They had a hope that things would get better, that things would change. So I think we have to change that expectation to a hope that when I have this conversation with Jason, Jason's going to do better. I hope that. But if I go into it saying, I expect Jason to change, and then I don't see it, I'm going to be resentful. I'm going to have a problem, because I done told you 12 times already. So at some point, you got to say, I'm not having a conversation with anymore.
Yeah.
You just got to let them have theirs. And that's why the class that's been designed is, and it's a mandatory class that we teach, that disruptive bias. It's mandatory. You have to go through it. So the class is not designed to change anyone. The class is designed to make you aware of your biases and let you know that there are certain things that go against our corporate culture that you can be held accountable for. So now when I call you into the office because you call somebody a nigger, you can't say that I didn't know that saying nigger was wrong. Or I call somebody a cracker, I can't say that I didn't know that calling them a cracker was wrong. Did you go to the bias class? So you know that that's a word that we don't use in this culture.
Right.
That's why people are getting in trouble now with their social media pages. They think they have freedom of speech to say whatever they want to whatever they want to say on their personal page, but not realize that even when you're at home and you're on your personal page, you still can be held accountable because you're a representative of the company that you work for.
Yeah.
I tell people, watch what you put on your Facebook page. Watch what you say on social. I got freedom of speech. Yeah, but it doesn't come without repercussion. You have the right, but the company also has a right to say, this is not what we represent. And that's why every time I see some kind of slogan, somebody saying something that's derogatory and nasty and just racially heated, I'm sending it to their company. Is this what your company represents? I saw this on their page. This was forwarded to me. I'm silent no more, bro. I'm serious.
Freedom doesn't mean freedom doesn't mean you're free from responsibility. You still got to be responsible.
Or accountability.
Accountability, yeah.
Right. Like, so you can say what you want to say, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to come back to bite you. You're absolutely right. The First Amendment right gives you freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean that there's no repercussion in certain instances behind what you just said. So you got to check yourself. That's that unchecked bias, right? I just think I need to say this because this is what I believe. Yeah, it might be what you believe, but did you realize how racist that was, what you just said?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Tonight, guys, I want to encourage you guys to, build some relationships outside of your immediate groups and have these conversations to check where you are. You may be somewhere where you're not really are, where you're not. You're just not there. You think you're there, but you're not. And it's not until you go outside of your immediate culture do you find out that it's not working and you need to make some adjustments. And so I want to encourage everyone that is listening to this live tonight to take that personal assessment, take that personal evaluation of the way you think, the way you perceive your immediate group of friends and your immediate work environment and where you go on a consistent basis because it helps to shape the way you see the world. Right. And I want you to examine that because in 2020, we are all being called to the carpet and we have to move beyond symbolism and we have to be. We have to be the change that we desire to see in others and we desire to see in our community. Ted, any last words that you want to leave with anybody tonight, man?
One thing that that kind of helped me, it kind of speaks to what you were just saying about getting outside of your comfort zone. When I became a flight attendant, there were so many biases that I had about the world. And when I began to fly all over the world and see the world, whether it was for work assignments, whether it was just for leisure or pleasure, I began a lot of my biases were being challenged because there were things that I was taught, some things I caught, some things I read, or some things I experienced from the television channels or the movies that I watched, and I had perceptions about people, places, and things. And it wasn't until I got outside of my shell and began to see the world for myself that I began to see that some of the biases that I had were not accurate, and that the biases that I had impacted someone in a negative way. And that's when we really have to begin to allow ourselves to be open to the ideas, the thoughts, the perspectives of other people, because if we stay within our own perspective, we won't see the world through another lens. And there are so many lenses in the world. You can't see out of somebody else's lens, but you certainly can understand and put yourself, kind of like that old saying, put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
We do that because we want to actually understand someone else. We want to be a better person. I want to be, and for us as Christians, we want to be more Christ-like, right? We want to see the world through the eyes of Christ, or we want to see the world through different eyes, because my lenses might be tainted and I don't realize it. Unconscious bias, right?
Yeah.
Or my lenses can be tainted and I know it, but I got to have a willingness in my heart to say, let me take off my glasses that I'm looking through and let me see it through yours for a moment. It may not change me, but it may just give me a different perspective to see it, so that I can maybe offer more grace or more understanding or more empathy to someone who does not look like me, who doesn't believe what I believe, who doesn't see things the way I see.
Yeah.
Take your glasses off.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Ted, man, I really thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you,
And
bro.
everybody who joined in tonight, even the couple of people who have shared comments and thoughts and asked questions, really appreciate you lending to what we're saying is a very necessary conversation. And I want to encourage everybody to continue the conversation and continue to make the adjustments and changes that's necessary for there to be not just reformation, but reconstruction within our policies, our laws, as we're dealing with systemic racism, as we're dealing with, the different things that may block us from advancing and moving forward. I want to encourage us to, build alliances with people, maybe not within our a race, that will help us advance the cause. Sometimes, we need that ally so that they can speak to their peers, right? But if we walk with our, intrinsic biases concerning that other race, then it won't allow us to make the progress that we could have if we had that relationship there. So I want to encourage us to just, move beyond our comfort zone tonight, and let's go and let's be the change that we desire to see. And let's push, man. As Ted said, no more silence. No more silence. Let's not wait for something else to happen for us to just, make a lot of noise about that situation. But man, all injustices, let's speak. Let's talk about it. Let's hold each other accountable. I am not saying you got to be social media police. You don't have to troll everybody's statuses. But let's just start within ourselves, our immediate circle, our families. If healing and a change of thought can begin there, it gives our community chances to, grow and thrive and move beyond, anything that may potentially be a hindrance or
and I'm here offering my services. If anybody wants to have a conversation with your group, your family, your church, and you want to talk about conscious or unconscious bias, that's my world right now. So I'm open for conversation. You can reach me at Teddy Andrews 06 at yahoo.com. Teddy Andrews 06 at yahoo.com, or just hit me on my inbox, or send your information, and I'm glad to have a conversation. I'm having a conversation next week with another church on their live, just to kind of have some conversations, because it's so necessary right now. And everybody's looking for everyone else to change, but we don't want to change. And there's a song that I used to sing as a kid in my church growing up, and every Usher's anniversary every year, you know about that, Jay. Usher's anniversary every year, they asked me to sing a song that said, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." So we're gonna have peace. You gotta, like Jason said, you gotta be the change you want to see. You gotta first change before you can expect anybody else to change.
Yep. Ted, I'm putting your information up now, and we're gonna flash it across the screen real quick. Just go ahead and hold on one second. boop, boop, boop.
This was good, man.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate you lending this to us tonight. You can contact Teddy, Teddy Andrews 06 at yahoo.com. Is that also your social media
Yeah.
pin? Yep,
Mhm.
Teddy Andrews 06. Just remember that, Teddy Andrews 06. Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation tonight, and
Likewise, bro.
we'll definitely keep in touch even beyond tonight's conversation, because this is an
Yes, sir.
ongoing thing. We have to continue to evolve. Life is changing, even as policies are changing.
Right.
And like we're having these conversations, they're having these conversations, and
Exactly.
some of them are not looking to have the conversation change. Some of them are looking to see how they can change the package instead of changing
Right.
what's inside the package.
Correct.
So we got to be aware of that. And again, man, we just want to encourage everybody to challenge yourself, challenge your immediate environment. Excellent conversation tonight.
Look at
Ted,
your circle. Look at your circle.
there you go. Check your circle. Check your
Some of us,
circle.
some of us live in egg circles, and some of us we busting out of circles.
Make sure we check them all. All right. So, Ted, I'm gonna pray, man, and
Thank you.
again, man, appreciate this conversation. And
Likewise.
looking forward to the evolution of our relationship and just our future. So, God, we thank you tonight for everything that has been said and done. God, I thank you for my brother. I thank you for the information that you have given to him. I thank you for the burden that you have placed inside of his heart to address this very important issue, God. Father, I pray that you would touch his body, that you would touch his mind, that you will
Yes.
continue to give him favor as he travel, not just this country, God, but the world, to
Yes, Lord.
share this information. We pray that the seed that he sows will yield a fruit of change. Father, we
Yes.
pray that the ears will be open. We pray that the hearts, oh God, will take in what it is that he's sharing, God,
Yes.
and that their lives will change. And we thank you for his voice in this season.
Hallelujah.
Continue to strengthen him, continue to guide him.
Yes, Lord.
In the
Yes,
name
Lord.
of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Appreciate
Amen.
you, bro.
Appreciate